Well, this is the video that everybody's been asking for, and I can assure you that I'm going to be breaking down a ton of things that you have not heard of before and will not find anywhere else, because I've watched all the other videos of this comparison on YouTube, and I can tell you that none of them dive into the details that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So today we're going to be doing a direct side-by-side comparison of eXp Realty versus Real Broker, the two agent-owned, agent-grown, cloud-based brokerages that a lot of agents are considering, and I want to make sure that you've got the right information when trying to make an educated decision, because I've spent over 20 hours diving into all of the details of these models, and I can tell you for certain that some of the things are going to come as a bit of a shock. So let me explain how this is going to be mapped out. First, I'm going to talk about the growth of the companies. Then I'm going to be breaking down the compensation structure in terms of the fees for production, the stock in each company, the revenue share systems, as well as the support. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap everything up and pull it together with some major concerns that I have that I really urge you to take note of so that you don't make a costly mistake, and give you my final thoughts at the end of this. Now, if you do want to book a private one-on-one Zoom meeting with me to talk about your decisions of which brokerage you're thinking of, then please feel free to click the calendar link below and you'll be able to book directly into my calendar. Now, I've got a full presentation built out just for you guys, and I can't wait to dive into this and show you some pretty interesting findings. So without further ado, let's dive into the head-to-head comparison of eXp Realty versus Real Broker. Alrighty, so let's dive into the head-to-head comparison of eXp Realty versus Real Broker. Now, a couple disclaimers and a couple things that I need to say before we get rolling with this, because this is going to be the most in-depth, clearly explained explanation of the side-by-side that you're going to see. This is a company overview using publicly available information, solely discussing the agent compensation plans as they stand at the time of this recording, which are subject to change. It's early April right now, so the disclaimer that I want to say is, of course, sometimes brokerages change how they're operating and some of the structure in which the agents are going to have to follow. So my recommendation is, before you make any decisions, if you feel like you would like to, feel free to go vet either brokerage yourself, look at the details, see if anything's changed, and make your own educated decision. All of the information that's going to be shared in this presentation is just screenshots from the publicly available websites that you can check out yourself. So it's not opinion based, it's not theory based, it is everything that is shared that you can look at yourself as well. And I'm going to show you a couple mathematical breakdowns, and a couple other things I want to say is we're not going to be discussing financial positions of the brokerage and health of the brokerage. We're not going to be discussing anything based on predictions or theory or anything else like that, like I've seen many videos talking about, which unfortunately I don't agree with. And the last thing I'm going to say is, at the end of this video, I'm going to talk to you about some of the conversations I've had with agents that are currently at Real. Because what I don't want you to think is that this is just some completely biased presentation, because some people might take it that way because I'm at eXp Realty. Well, what you're going to see is I'm at eXp Realty for a reason, because once I start to share some of the stuff with you, I could go to Real, but I'm here for a reason, and I want to explain some of the things, the many things that nobody else is talking about, that I think you really need to listen to, because I've talked to people that went from eXp to Real, Real to eXp, currently at Real, and I'm currently at eXp. So I've dove into all of it. I've spent over 20 hours researching everything and talking to people. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just looking at the company growth. So eXp Realty was founded in 2009, and at the time of this recording, I should have updated this, we're at 78,000 agents and a little bit more than that. Now, Real was founded in 2014, and they went from 0 to 4,000 agents, or a little bit more, in the last 8 years. Now, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting to think about is a lot of people that talk to me about Real and trying to convince me of the model are saying, Mike, well, Real is the next eXp and they're going to do what eXp did, so I want to be in at the ground floor. Well, what I think is really interesting is that from 2014, eXp went from just shy of 800 agents to 78,000 agents. In the same amount of time, Real went from 0 to 4,000 agents, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I don't agree with in terms of how they got to those 4,000 agents, but that's a 74,000 agent difference in the exact same time frame. So I just want to kind of preface it by talking about that before we get into the brokerage fees and some of the other compensation plans. So let's look at the brokerage fees. As you can see here, at eXp Realty, we're on an 80-20 split with a $16,000 cap. Once you cap, you go to 100% commission with a transaction fee that I'm going to discuss right after this. And in order to cap, you have to do $80,000 in GCI. Well, at Real Broker, they're on an 85-15 split, a $12,000 cap, and once you cap, you go to 100% commission. But as you see, it actually is the exact same GCI to cap at Real, which is also $80,000. So it takes the same amount of GCI or gross commission income to cap at both brokerages, regardless of Real's split and cap being lower. Now, let's start talking about the transaction fees. So at eXp, after you cap, you go to 100% commission with a $250 per transaction fee until you become an icon agent, which I'll explain in the next section. But what this means is that once you do 20 deals after capping, or $250 multiplied by 20 transactions, which is $5,000 in transaction fees, that's when you become an icon agent. When you become an icon agent is when you get your $16,000 cap back for free in company stock. And then the transaction fee further reduces to $75. Now that's kind of key, because let's talk about Real's transaction fees. Real's transaction fees are actually a bit lower, which is $225 per transaction. The only difference is that that is indefinite. It does not drop off after you hit a certain metric. So if you start running the math, what you'll see is that once you do about 24 deals after capping, it actually becomes cheaper from the transactional fee perspective to be at eXp Realty, because again, the 225 never reduces. So if you look at from an agent's perspective that starts to do a pretty decent amount of volume, then it actually becomes quite a bit cheaper to be over there at eXp. So now let's look at the brokerage fees. Now, as you can see here, $149 to start for both brokerages for the first month. Now we've got a bit of a different structure in terms of the ongoing fees. So at eXp Realty, there's an $85 per month fee. And the one disclaimer again, everything I'm going to talk about is from the United States model perspective for both brokerages. If you want to talk about Canada, feel free to reach out to me, book that meeting. About 80% of the agents in my organization are in the States, 20% are about in Canada. So again, going back to it, $85 per month in the United States at eXp Realty, which is $1,020 per year. Now, while Real doesn't have a monthly brokerage fee, what they do have is an annual brokerage fee, which is created from taking $250 from your first 2 transactions. Now, eXp does have a couple extra fees. There's a $25 per deal broker review fee, and that is to make sure everything's compliant. And there's a $40 E&O air emissions insurance cost, which caps at $500 a year. Now, both of the E&O and the transaction fee in terms of the broker review is built into the $500 at Real. The only thing is to start to look at the long-term play here as you start to become a stronger agent and do more deals. Once you start doing, I think the number I calculated was about 34 deals, it actually becomes cheaper to be at eXp Realty from a transactional fee and a broker fee than it is at Real, because of the fact that that transaction fee at Real is $225 indefinitely and does not further reduce to something like eXp with $75. So now let's talk about the CRM. So at eXp, for free, you get KV Core, which is widely considered to be one of the best IDX website, lead gen, and CRM softwares in the business. At Real, you have the option to pay for Chime, which is a similar comparable CRM to KV Core. Now, I have talked to some people that went from eXp to Real, Real to eXp, and the general consensus, and again, this is not my opinion, but just what I've heard, is that most people consider both to be more or less equivalent in nature, but a lot of people feel like Chime is built out more like a dialer system and KV Core is more of a traditional CRM. So the general consensus from people at both brokerages is that they prefer KV Core, but either which way, very similar in nature. The only difference is that Real, you have to pay an additional $25 a month, which equates to $300 a year. So I know there's a lot of people that look at Real versus eXp and say, Mike, the fees are so much cheaper at Real. Well, when you start looking at it, the total fees, if you want the CRM, which every agent should be doing, is that the fees at Real is $800 a year. The fees at eXp is $1,020 per year. Well, that's a $220 difference. And when you start seeing some of the other stuff I'm going to dive into, that is going to become completely negligent. Now, let's start diving into the next aspect. And before I do, I want to say, I think it's great that both brokerages exist. I love that there's brokerages now that are going cloud-based, dropping overhead, reducing expenses, giving ownership, giving more back to the agents in the form of additional income streams. I love it. So I'm not denying that. I think it's great that there's options for people, and I'm really excited about this. So just don't get that confused. Now let's talk about some of the stuff that is, in my opinion, a little bit scary. So let's look at this, for example, and I'm going to talk to you about a number of things that I've seen explained nowhere else. At eXp Realty, there's a 7-tier system, and at Real, there's a 5-tier system. So One of the things off the bat is that you lose 2 tiers when you go to Real versus eXp. And one of the things, whether you like it or not, or agree with it or not, over time, almost always, these end up being built like a pyramid structure. And what that means is that the 2 bottom tiers are going to be your 2 biggest tiers. So that's essentially losing, and what we consider, most people that run these businesses consider a tier level of business. Because for example, if you're a traditional team leader at, let's say, a Remax, and you bring in agents to your team, you've got a 1-tier system. You've got 1 extra business below you creating leverage and making income. Whereas at these models, which is incredible, you get multiple tiers. But at Real, you'd be giving up the 2 biggest ones. And I'm going to prove that mathematically here in a second. Let's start looking at the different types of qualification models that nobody talks about related to revenue share. There is a full qualification model, a no qualification model, and a hybrid model. Let me explain before I go into the details of the financials. If you look at these revenue share models at any industry, a no qualification model means that regardless if you have any FLQAs, frontline qualifying agents, or an agent that has closed a deal within the last 6 months, regardless, you will get all of your revenue share. Well, neither of these models are a no qualification model because it wouldn't make sense for the company. A qualification model is what Real is, and that means that if you don't qualify to open that tier, or if you do not have, for example, the 10 frontline qualifying agents need to open your second tier, you get nothing. And this has actually been the bane of existence for some of these styles of businesses in other industries, because agents, even by example, as I'm going to show you here in a second, end up sponsoring somebody that, even though they don't care about revenue share, sponsor somebody that ends up caring about it, builds a massive organization, they don't have the right qualification, and they get nothing for it. Now, eXp is a hybrid model. As you can see here, at eXp, if you don't have the full qualifications of the FLQAs, you are guaranteed the expansion share no matter what. So even if you don't have the criteria to open up these tiers, you still get something always. Whereas if you do open up the tiers, you get the total of these 2 numbers combined for that tier. Now let's talk about a couple things, and one scary thing I'm going to save for the end of this one little section before I run the numbers for you. A lot of agents say, well, Mike, at Real, it's better because there's $4,000 on the first tier, you get more money, and there's $2,800 at eXp, so you're going to make more money if you don't care about revenue share. Because a lot of people at Real are talking to me saying, well, I just want to build out kind of my front line, and we don't really care about duplication or revenue share growth long-term as a huge play. Well, okay, let me get into that for a second. One of the things that I think is dangerous is that, as you can see here, the smallest tier over time is usually almost always going to be your first tier. The biggest tier is almost always going to be your bottom tier. What you'll see here with Real is the biggest compensation is on the smallest tier, and the lowest compensation is on the biggest tier. And with eXp, you'll see that a pretty substantial amount is on the first tier, whereas the biggest amount, 5% total, is on the biggest tier. So in my opinion, what this means is that Real's revenue share is actually more in the favor of the company. eXp is more in favor of the agent, because again, what you'll see is that the 5th tier at Real over time, over the years, will usually build out to be the biggest tier of your business. And that's the lowest tier you're going to get compensated on, meaning more money goes back to the company. And if you don't open up any of these tiers, all of that money goes to the company. At eXp, the biggest tier of compensation is on the biggest tier that you're going to build long term. And if you don't open up the tiers, you are still going to get a specific amount, which is really powerful. Now, 2 more things that I want to talk about is a lot of people say, well, Mike, if I get 10 frontline qualifying agents, I make more money at Real than I do at eXp. Let me dive into that. At Real, if you have 10 frontline qualifying agents, you will have 2 tiers open, which will amount to, again, max per agent, $7,200. At eXp, for 10 frontline qualifying agents, you have 3 tiers of businesses, and that equates to $8,000. Now, the 2 things that I think are a bit scary from, again, what people have told me, I'm not making any assumptions, is people are saying, Mike, we just want to kind of build this first tier, and we're not too focused on duplication or growing the residual income. Okay, no problem. Well, the problem with that is that if you're just focused on building your first tier, you build your first tier. Well, the people you brought on your first tier are focused on building their first tier, so now they've got a second tier, and they're focused on their first tier. If everybody's focused on their first tier, even though people think that that means that their focus is not on revenue share, they're going to have to care about revenue share because that's going to drive through every single tier because everybody's caring about their first tier. So I think that's kind of interesting to think about in terms of how they're trying to phrase it. Now, the really scary part is here in the fine print. Agents must be producing. They need to produce $450 in revenue in Real in the last 6 months to remain in producing status. So what that means is that in order to receive any of your revenue share, you need to be a producing agent. Two things I'm going to say about that. Number one, if you look at any of the big leaders at eXp, almost none of them produce because they got into this looking at the revenue share as an exit plan. The amount of 50, 60, 70-year-olds that have joined us, been able to build residual income to go enjoy retirement and not have to produce is incredible. It built the lifestyle they wanted in real estate. Whereas if they were at Real, they couldn't do that because they have to do 2 deals a year to get their revenue share. People that I know personally that are in my group making $500,000 to $1 million a month in revenue share would be making $0 at Real because they are no longer producing. So I think this is very scary, especially since a lot of people are looking at the revenue share as an exit strategy or retirement plan, whereas at Real, it is not. So now what I'm going to do is go into a full side-by-side comparison showing you real numbers in an example of somebody that didn't care about revenue share, like probably many of you, and one person that is one of the top of the company and show you the drastic difference between these two models. All right, let's walk through 2 specific examples using exact numbers from agents that I personally know at eXp, modeling it after Real, and I'm doing it this way by design for a couple of reasons. To demonstrate the type of compensation, to explain what happens long-term, and to show you 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, because the first example I have on the screen here is an agent that did not care about revenue share. Very similar to the many agents that are getting enticed to go to Real because they don't care about revenue share. Well, let me show you what happens and why this is dangerous. And the other example I'll show you is one of the top agents of the company and what happens long-term. Now, let me explain a couple things here. Assumptions, again, you can see is that this is not a guaranteed reflection of what you can get because it's impossible to predict and there's multiple variables that impact the outcome. It's not endorsed by either brokerage. Here's the definition of an FLQA. The reason why I say FLQA is because the first tier, I have the number of FLQA. Every other tier, I have the total number of agents because that's just how the spreadsheet works. So let me explain this for a quick second here. Is that the reason why I'm showing full tiers full of agents is because this is what happens long term. And every other person that I've seen done a comparison video of the revenue share shows what happens with your first few agents. Well, of course, based on $4,000 on your first tier versus $2,800 on your first tier at eXp, you will make more money at Real with your first couple of agents. But let me show you what happens long term, because since Real hasn't been adding agents much at all for long term, then unfortunately, nobody's looking at this as a long-term play, but I'm hoping that you're deciding to choose one of these brokerages for a long-term play and not to just switch soon after you join. So this is what happens almost every time long-term. Let me show you. So again, this agent did not care about agent attraction or recruiting or sponsoring or revenue share. So he does not have 10 FLQAs. He actually has 9. However, on his other tiers, he did sponsor somebody that ended up caring about revenue share, which by the way has happened every single time I've ever seen somebody be at either brokerage for quite some time, especially if you're a decent agent with a decent brand. And you can see here, he's got 1,925 agents on these other tiers. Whereas at Real, he would have had only 1,556 agents because you lose your bottom 2 tiers. Let's see what happens and why there's a lot of danger with the qualification model that Real has. Because again, if you don't meet the FLQAs for a certain tier on Real, you get $0. Whereas at eXp, if you don't have the frontline qualifying agents to open that tier, you still get the expansion share no matter what. So let's look at this example. He does not have 10 FLQAs. However, he's been at the company for 4 years. He's helped change the lives and bring 1,925 people to the company, not even with intent, but just based on how all of these models work. That's why they're built this way, for duplication. And you can see on average, the half cap is usually within reason, one of the best examples, even though he doesn't have 10 FLQAs and any of those other tiers open. He still makes almost $250,000 a year from this extra little percentage that's guaranteed no matter what, even if you don't have the FLQAs. At Real, because he does not have the FLQAs to open up his second tier, or 10, because he has 9, he gets nothing on any of these tiers. And you can see $250,000-ish versus $18,000. But again, some people are going to say, well, Mike, what if he has 10 FLQAs? Well, we can model this after 10 FLQAs and you can still see the difference. So to me, this is really scary because this is what's going to happen to a lot of people at Real, is that they're going to be at the brokerage trying to, ride whatever upswing they think that is coming. And then they're unfortunately, based on potentially not having the enough FLQAs to open up certain tiers, are going to be losing a ton of money. And they still have to end up producing to even get the revenue share. This agent with 9, he actually doesn't even produce anymore because he does other investments into crypto and other things like that. So he would not only be getting nothing at Real, but now he's getting almost $250,000 a year just based on this guaranteed amount that you get at eXp. Now what I want to do is I want to show you an example of somebody that crushes it at the brokerage and does have a focus on revenue share. All right, so this is one of the top agents in the entire company at eXp, in the top 5, and these are his exact numbers as of about a couple of weeks ago. So they're now actually over a total of 18,000, which is really incredible. So let's walk through how drastically different this is, because again, the last example was somebody that did not care about revenue share, but over the years, because this is long-term play and nobody's talking about what happens long-term, because they know the only way that it makes sense to even look at Real's revenue share is in the short term. So when you start looking at this from a long-term perspective, because this is your business, this is your future, that was what happens with somebody that doesn't care about revenue share. This is somebody that does care about revenue share, and he's one of the top agents in the company. I will never say any names, but here are the numbers. He has a total of 17,916 agents, whereas at Real, because of the loss of the 2 bottom or 2 biggest tiers, as explained earlier, he's losing 9,360 agents. And you can see here the astronomical difference long-term, because the highest tier of compensation at eXp is on the bottom, where the majority of our agents will fall long-term, and the lowest tier of compensation at Real is on the bottom, where the biggest tier will fall. Now you can see here that the difference, if we just look at the average of the average agent half capping, you can see, and this is actually pretty accurate, because I know he makes about $1 million per month. At Real, he would be making half of that, right? So when you start looking at this, it's really important to look at the fact that if you don't care about revenue share and you're at Real, then unfortunately, you will likely either be in one of 2 positions. Either A, you lose a ton of money long-term, or B, you are now forced to go attract agents and recruit agents to open up your tiers, because you'll realize how much money you're losing. Whereas at eXp Realty, if you don't care about revenue share, you still get a guaranteed amount every time. So if you sponsor somebody that ends up randomly going and building a massive organization, like happens almost every time, then you're still going to benefit from it, even if you don't care about revenue share. And if you do care about revenue share at either brokerage, you will see that you do not want to lose the 2 biggest tiers of your business long-term, and the fact that that bottom tier is going to be the one that nets you the most money. So I just wanted to show 2 contrasting examples here with using exact numbers that I have on the screen in front of me down here to show you what happens long-term with both of these brokerages. Now, as you can see here, the 2 different revenue share requirements. So at eXp, in order to receive your revenue share, again, these are both screenshots from the IC or independent contract agreements of both brokerages. At eXp, you just have to be in good standing, meaning that you're not in trouble. You need to be up to date on your current fees with both eXp as well as your MLS dues and things like that. At Real, you can see here, qualification to receive revenue share. To receive revenue share, an agent must meet the definition of a producing agent, which is an agent that provides at least $450 in company dollar based on the 15% split to the company in the last 6 months, meaning that you have to be an FLQA yourself. Now, let's look at the sponsorship requirements because this one is also quite scary to me. At eXp Realty, let's look at what the responsibilities of a sponsor are. You can see here a sponsor is important and, it's the person that's the most influential in your decision to join the company. Let's look a little bit deeper here. Again, from the ICAs. A sponsor's role requirement to qualify as a sponsor is to be the most influential person to help his or her decision to join eXp. If the selected sponsor has made representations or promises above and beyond referring an agent to join eXp, it is solely the responsibility of the joining agent to confirm the sponsor's ability and intent to deliver all the additional support promised. So let me break this down for a second. At my organization, the Wolfpack, I give all of my social media training for free, 4 live mastermind calls per week with 8-figure, 9-figure entrepreneurs, direct one-on-one support, full production training, full internal private hub with onboarding and accelerated programs and everything, and a ton of other stuff that I won't even get into. That's just me. At eXp, you're able to provide additional value on top of the model to give more value to the agents to help them increase their production. Last year, the amount of people I helped double, triple, quadruple their production in 1 year, even agents do up to 87 deals, $67 million in production in their first year, entirely free through our training that they never would have got elsewhere. Now that's just myself. 7 people above us, because we've got a 7-tier system, are able to offer value for free because we're compensated through the revenue share. That is what helps agents scale their business and provides more value to the agents. Let's look at Real. Agent acknowledges and confirms that the sponsoring agent has not offered, enticed, or promised anything of value, including but not limited to lead generation platforms, CRM, coaching, trips, rebates, currency in return for naming this agent sponsor. So there's a prohibition against providing anything of additional value to help join your group. Now that's a really dangerous thing. And if you want to see the numeric breakdown, I actually ran the production numbers of eXp versus Real. And what you'll see is that once you start doing more deals and capping, the amount of commission you're going to make on the production side, eXp versus Real, is almost identical. It's only off by a couple of few $1,000s. Well, that's comparing apples to apples. But if we compare somebody that joins Real Broker that can't get any additional value, then somebody that joins us and gets this massive stack of value that helps most agents double their production in 12 months, well, now you're comparing apples to oranges because we're going to increase the production using this unique training and the others aren't able to provide certain things like that. So I think that gets rid of basically the entire beauty of having a 7-tier system or a 5-tier system is to leverage your upline for additional value, but you can't do that. So let me explain something that I don't agree with, is that when you look at the majority of the talented agents or strong producers that have recently joined Real, again, I personally know them. They were incentivized or enticed through oftentimes 6-figure stock options. Very similar to Compass. Compass would incentivize agents to join them with 6-figure stock options and other things like that, essentially paying people to come to their company. So when you look at the fact that they went from 0 to 4,000 agents in the last 8 years, the most recent strong agents that have joined, and the reason why they're actually getting a bit of momentum here, is that because they're enticing people to join, which means that the company's operating in the exact opposite way that the agents are allowed to operate in, which doesn't make sense to me. And the thing that I get fearful of is that if the company incentivized me, for example, with 6 figures in stock options to come to Real, well, don't you think they're going to give me a little bit more love, a little bit more support, a little bit more leeway than other agents that just joined the company because they need me to succeed because they want a return on their investment? So I don't like that there's that bias because at eXp, they don't incentivize anybody to come to the brokerage. They don't pay people to come to the brokerage. And in my personal opinion, if you have to financially incentivize somebody to join your brokerage, which happened to multiple of my friends that are at Real right now, otherwise they probably wouldn't be there. That's just saying that your compensation structure is not strong enough for talented, strong agents to want to come by themselves, like many have at eXp. Now let's talk about the stock awards. Now, again, I think it's great that both companies give ownership in the brokerages. It's something that every agent should have, ownership of their business instead of renting their business like most franchise brokerages. Let's dive into it. Very similar in nature, and I'm going to explain a couple unique things here. So as you can see here, the sustainable equity plan, which is very similar to option number 2 at Real, where you earn stock by capping and attracting agents. Icon Award agent, getting your cap back in company stock, very similar to the Elite Agent Award. And then the Agent Equity Program is very similar to the purchasing stock at a discount. Now let's look at how each of these operate. So as we can see here, let's look at the stock awards for agent stock purchase first. At eXp Realty, before and after capping. So at all times, you can take 5% of your commission, your net commission, to purchase stock at a 10% discount. Now, there's no max contribution limit to this either, which I think is great. Now at Real, bit of a different structure. Before capping, you can take 5% of your net commission to purchase stock with a 25% additional bonus after 1 year, which is great. However, as you're going to see this as a recurring theme, that is set to reduce to 15% at 5,000 agents once Real hits that. So what you're going to see is eXp did this in the beginning as well, offered a bunch to some of the new adopters and then quickly trickled down and reduced what they were offering. After capping, you can take 10% of net commission and purchase stock with a 50% additional bonus after 1 year, which is set to reduce to 30% at 5,000 agents, which is again publicly shown on their website. Max contribution though, before capping 3,400, after capping 15,000, with a total of 18,400. Now, for somebody that's a low producer, this makes sense, and this is probably, maybe where you would max out. For somebody that is starting to do decent production and strong production, eXp is much more advantageous because there's no limit. So now let's look at the capping and attraction stock awards. And then after the next one, which is the Icon versus Elite Agent, I'm going to talk about something that I'm a little bit fearful of. So at eXp, whenever you close your first transaction, you get $200 in free company stock. Whenever you fully cap and pay your $16,000 into the company, you get an additional $400 in free company stock. Whenever you sponsor an agent and they close their first deal, you get an additional $400 in free company stock. All of these have a 3-year vesting period. Now let's look at Real. At Real, you get $0 or you get nothing whenever you close your first transaction. Whenever you cap and pay your $12,000 into the company, you get 500 shares, which is set to reduce as well. But again, it's not a certain dollar amount, it's shares. So based on where the shares might be today, might be $2 or something, that could be $1,000 worth of, shares whenever you cap. Now, whenever you sponsor an agent and they close their first deal, you get an additional 250 shares. Both are set to reduce, all of which have a 3-year vesting period. Now, let's look at the Elite Agent versus Icon Award. At eXp Realty, whenever you cap plus 20 transactions or hit another metric, which we'll get into, you get your entire $16,000 cap back in company stock. 8,000 of that is for hitting the production awards, which again are going to show in the requirements. 4,000 is for cultural awards, which is doing trainings in the cloud for other agents. And 2,000 times 2, a total of 4,000, is for attending the live eXp events, eXpCon, and shareholders. The requirements at eXp, it's cap plus $5,000 in post-cap transaction fees, which at $250 a transaction is cap plus 20 deals. Now, the alternative for higher price point markets is you can do $500,000 in GCI with a minimum of 10 transactions. No other criteria, so keep that in mind. Vesting period is tiered. 3-year vesting period for the production awards, 2-year vesting period for the culture, and $2,000 or $4,000, 2,000 times 2 for attending the live events. There's no vesting period. You can take this out whenever you want. At Real, you get $24,000 back in company stock, $16,000 of which is based on production, $8,000 based on cultural awards. Let's look at the requirements. So cap plus $6,000 in post-cap transaction, which based on a 225 transaction fee is cap plus 27 transactions. Now, the one that I think is a little bit weird is that they also have $500,000 in GCI, including 10 transactions, but there has to be including 10 transactions with sale prices over $1 million. Whereas at eXp, it can be 10 transactions of any price as long as you hit the GCI or the gross commission income metric. And for the vesting period, 3 years for all of it. Now, one of the things that a lot of people say is, Mike, if I'm an Icon agent, I get way more stock at Real than I do at eXp, which is true. The only thing that I get a little bit concerned about, and again, this came from the conversation I had with the agent that was incentivized to go to Real, is that a lot of people are making emotional predictions. And what I mean by that is a lot of people are saying, well, Mike, if Real does what eXp does, and I get all this stock, and I get all these shares, I'm going to be rich, just like the people that were early adopters at eXp. Well, my question to you is, if Real is going to do what eXp did, then why within the last 8 years have they only got to 4,000 agents, which a lot of which were incentivized to come to the company in terms of some of the more influential agents, and eXp went from 800 to 78,000 agents without having to incentivize. And that's one of the things that I think is a bit scary, because even the agent that I talked to that is currently at Real said that coming over here for the stock is a gamble for them. And if it doesn't work out, they will likely come back to eXp. They just didn't have the right sponsor here at eXp. So they admitted to me that they know this is a gamble. And I don't like the idea of gambling, because I would rather have a predictable model that actually has the numbers to back it up in terms of the trajectory, as well as a security blanket with the revenue share, which is an insurance policy on your business that Real doesn't have. So now let's look at the support structure, which is, again, really interesting before we kind of dive into the concerns that I have. So when we start looking at the support at eXp, there's a cloud-based brokerage virtual world, which I'm going to get into with you. I'm actually going to do a quick little demonstration because I want to show you that there's in real-time support. Well, at eXp, there's also multiple brokers in every state. And at the point of recording this video, there's actually almost 2,000 employees, but I wanted to be conservative. So I just wrote 1,900 approximately employees at eXp. And based on the agent count of about 78,000, that means there's 41 agents per employee supporting the brokerage. At Real, they have a mobile app. So you're running your entire business off your cell phone. You have to email for support. And from the agents that I've talked to that are currently at Real and have left Real, both have said that sometimes it takes days to get responses back and is back and forth. So when you waste time, you have to understand time is the most precious commodity in the world. When you save time, like we do with the cloud-based brokerage, and invest that back in income producing activities, your income goes up. Whereas if you have to wait for support, you're losing money because you're losing time and wasting time. Currently, I've been told there's only one broker for each state. The agent that I talked to at Real said this has actually been pretty difficult because one of the brokers went on vacation and then there was no broker and they had no support, which is a little bit dangerous, which is why having multiple brokers in each state is very powerful. And at the time of this recording, there's about 62 employees at Real, which means that there's an average of 65 agents per employee, which means that eXp has 37% more support per agent than they do at Real. Okay, so as mentioned, I just wanted to show you a quick demonstration of how incredible the immediate support is in the eXp cloud-based virtual brokerage office. So as you can see here, you can walk around and look at all the different countries that eXp is open in. And what I want to do is I just want to prove a point to you here. This is even though it might look a little bit foreign and a bit quirky, I admit that. I thought it was crazy when I first saw it. Once you understand the utility behind it of being a time-saving tool, you'll realize how powerful it is. So let's say we need help with technology, right? Our CRM, our IDX website, anything else related to technology. At most brokerages, you'd have to contact your broker. At Real, you'd have to email support. Let's look at what happens with eXp. We could come down here to the tech support and come to the tech lobby. Now, it's actually 9 p.m. Mountain Time at the time that I'm recording this. And you can see usually offices would be shut, support wouldn't be emailing. Let's come in here. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 paid eXp employees that could help me immediately in real time right now. If I wanted to sit at that table, have a private conversation, get them to help me with anything immediately related to technology, and then I'm back to work. When you save time and invest time back into income producing activities, your income goes up. Let's look at one more example. Let's say we need help with accounting. We could pop in here. And again, related to accounting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people sitting in here right now that could help me with anything related to accounting. You've got all of these different specialist divisions, whether it be onboarding, whether it be account solutions, whether it be brokerage operations, growth and attraction, tech support, transaction processing. Anything you need is in here immediately whenever you want. So this is why the support at eXp is so powerful and why so many people love the cloud-based brokerage, because once you get around that it looks a bit foreign to most people, the utility of it is what is so powerful, because time is money. That's the most precious commodity in the world because you can't buy it back. If you save time, your income goes up. If you waste time because you're waiting for somebody to email back to you, well, unfortunately, that means that you're wasting money. So just wanted to give you a quick example of this. And now let's get back into the rest of the presentation. So now let's dive into some of the concerns I have. And then I'm going to talk about the two types of agents that I think, who should go to Real, who should go to eXp. So again, we already talked about the fact that there's 3 different styles of revenue share models in any industry, not just real estate, which is a no qualification model, which means regardless of the FLQAs you have, you're going to get your full revenue share, which neither model has. There's a qualification model, which, just to reiterate, is what Real is, which means that if you don't qualify for the certain tiers, you get nothing. This has been, again, the downfall of many companies in other industries. And then the hybrid model, which is eXp, which is ones that have thrived in other industries, which is that if you don't open up the full tier of compensation, you still get something. Now, again, I don't like the idea of losing the 2 biggest tiers long-term of your business, because financially we saw what that turns into. The revenue share payout at Real seems, in my opinion, to be very much in the brokerage's favor, because again, highest tier of compensation on the smallest tier of your business long-term, lowest tier of compensation on the biggest tier of your business long-term. And if you don't open up the tiers, all that money goes to the company. Whereas at eXp, highest tier of compensation on the bottom, very strong tier on the top, and you still get some either which way. Lack of exit strategy and retirement plan. Again, this is huge. A lot of people don't want to have to chase the next deal for the rest of their life. They want to retire, enjoy time with their family, doing the things they love. Everybody wants that. Well, at eXp, you don't have to close transactions. All you have to do is maintain your license and you continue to get your revenue share, even if you don't do any deals. At Real, you have to continue to produce. So now you don't have an exit strategy or retirement plan, which is very dangerous. And that's why a lot of, the older generation of agents are coming here, because it's the perfect exit at eXp. The ownership of the company. Again, I'm not going to make any assumptions. I'm just going to say some of the concerns that I have. eXp is majority owned by the agent body, and then the rest of the ownership is the founders and the board of the company. Well, when eXp is looking to make decisions, they bring some of those options and kind of ideas to the bigger groups like us at the company in some of our group calls and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Give us your feedback. And then they go discuss it, and then they implement whatever they think is going to be best for the agents, because it's majority agent owned. Real is majority owned by 3 VC companies, I still believe, which is majority owned by a venture capitalist company in Israel, and then 2 venture capitalist companies from Wall Street. Small portion owned by the founders. So my concern is that when you look at how eXp makes decisions, because it's majority agent owned, they're going to make decisions that are in the best interest of the agents. If you look at Real, my concern might not be reality, but my concern, just think about it, is that because it's majority owned by venture capitalists that just care about the stock price and the balance sheet and the financials, they're going to make decisions that might not be in the best interest of the agents, but are in the best interest of the stock price, balance sheet, and everything else like that financially. So I don't like rolling the dice on that kind of decision-making process. I really don't like when people act in one way and then expect others to act in a different way. So I really don't like that. Again, Real is incentivizing its influential agents, which I know, again, personally, and I've had these conversations and I know some of the numbers. I don't like that to get talent, they even, number one, have to incentivize people to come. Number two, are incentivizing people to come. And number three, their agents can't add any additional value to incentivize agents to join them, which makes no sense to me. Again, a lot of people are making stock predictions based on emotion. You have no data to say that Real is ever going to do what eXp does. You have no data to say that it's on the same trajectory as eXp, because clearly in the last 8 years, it's not. And a lot of people are rolling the dice, hoping it does. But again, I think a lot of people are going to be kind of surprised at where the cards land, because this is a very emotional thing, when with business, you should be making practical decisions, not emotional predictions, okay? Lack of value from the upline, because you can't offer anything of value on top of the model based on their ICA. format of support, I would much rather go directly to getting immediate support from paid eXp employees in the cloud than to have to email support and go back and forth and hope I get an answer. And then lack of innovation, because a lot of people are saying, Mike, Real is an innovative model. Well, Real is run off a mobile phone app, which have been around for like 10 years. Well, when you look at eXp for the last 12 years, we've been operating in a virtual cloud-based world. Well, now that the metaverse comes out, everybody's saying that that's the future and that's amazing. That came out last year. We've been doing this for 12 years. Which one do you think is more innovative? A cloud-based brokerage that you get immediate support from in real time on a global level, or a mobile app? So I think it's really important to just think about some of these things that I'm saying, because again, two things. A lot of people are going to say, Mike, you're just so biased because you're at eXp and you're not at Real. I could go to whatever brokerage I want, right? I'm not at Real because of these concerns and everything I mapped out here. I tell people all the time, if there was a better compensation plan than eXp, I'd be there. I'm not there because it's not. I'm an engineer. I run the numbers. I spend all day with my calculator. So I look at the data to show me what is the best long-term situation. So don't think that this is a biased kind of decision, because whether you join our group, which I've broken multiple records of the company, for various reasons, which I can talk to you about if you book a one-on-one call with me, it's not just about joining our group, it's about joining any group at eXp, because I want you to be at the model that's going to give you the greatest chance of long-term success for you and your loved ones. And having that insurance policy or the security policy of the revenue share that is residual that you retain while you maintain a license without having to produce, and all of the other things we talked about, that is what I believe people deserve and people need. Now, the last thing I'll say is, again, who do I think should go to either brokerage? Well, just based on the math, again, you make your own decision. You vet out all the opportunities and do what you need to do to deep dive and get the educated information. But just based on the math, it would make sense for lower producing agents to go to Real solely for the production difference, because it's going to be a few $1,000s, right? So I'm just being transparent there. Financially, a few $1,000s, you would make more at Real. That's, again, we're not going to get into the revenue share because we talked about that, which would not make it make sense. And the stock, you can't say that either, because that is, again, something that is just based on emotion. You have no idea that the stock will go up, down, or sideways. Okay. So just the production, you'll save a few $1,000s if you're a low producer at Real. At eXp, the agents that I think I should go there are ones that either are or want to be one day a strong producer, ones that want additional value on top of the model to help them scale their production, the ones that want to be a part of the fastest growing brokerage in history, the ones that want to be at a brokerage that allows you to build an exit strategy. So again, guys, I just wanted to be fully honest and wanted to give you all the details. I've spent a ridiculous amount of time researching this because I've seen all kinds of people talk about stuff, but everything they talk about is emotional, not looking at the actual details and structure, which is what I wanted to give you today. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out, book a meeting with me in my calendar. I'd love to talk to you about either options and see what we can do to help. So thanks so much for tuning in. As always, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.